Continue with the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, and I had stopped last week, right at the beginning of the the time of corresponding with kings. Prophet ﷺ, right after Hudaybiyah, between Hudaybiyah and Umrah al-Qada, between that year, before he came back for the Umrah, a few things happened, and then a few things happened after that before Fatah Mecca. So we don't know exactly the timings of all of these events. Some scholars will put one of them before the other and after the other, so it's really not certain exactly what the sequence is, but it doesn't matter. We know that within this period these events occurred. And we know that the Prophet ﷺ, the moment he went back to Mecca, to Medina, after he left Mecca from Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, he began immediately preparing a new ministry within his country that was going to be focused on corresponding with all of the kings of the land, all the leaders that existed around Medina. And he went as far as Persia and the Roman Empire and across the sea to Abyssinia. And he sent all of these kings messages with, he sent messengers carrying messages with them, where he is calling them to Islam and offering them to understand Islam. Aslim taslam was one of the very famous phrases he would use. Accept Islam and you will be safe, inshallah, in your life. And it's an interesting move that he made, alayhi salatu wasalam, because he took the struggle with Quraysh outside of Quraysh. Now he was no longer, alayhi salatu wasalam, just a local leader. He was international. He had branched out and he was speaking with kings outside, and Quraysh felt dwarfed by this action. And Quraysh themselves, they don't have that degree of pull to correspond with the kings of the land. So they felt quite dwarfed by this move that he made, alayhi salatu wasalam. Obviously coming with it was there was a lot that needed to be done. So one of the things that had to happen is that he needed to put together enough people to do this. And you needed individuals who had certain characteristics. You can't send a 10-year-old to speak to a king, right? You have to find someone who is seasoned, who is wise, who knows how to present themselves, who has power or experience in public speaking. Someone who speaks maybe other languages, has some connections in that land. They have to be trained. It wasn't a simple task. He put together 14 messengers, alayhi salatu wasalam, and sent them to the different kings of the land. And before I talk to you about all of this, I want to narrate for you this story that Abdullah ibn Abbas radhiyallahu anhu tells us. It's a very interesting story. These are examples of what their correspondences looked like the actual pieces of Sayyidina Ali and Muawiyah and others would write this down for him and put it together. And of course, at the beginning, there was a question of, well, how are they going to be, back then, how is it that they were going to validate that this was coming from a leader? You would have to have a seal. Every leader had a seal. Prophet ﷺ didn't have a seal. So they made for him a seal, and a prophetic seal. And it had on it what we call today, I think it's over here. Yeah, so that's the seal right there. So it's Muhammad Rasulullah, but written from the bottom up, right? So that the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always on top. And then they would put, you would take wax that was, and then you would put it on the wax, and then the king would see that this has not been, no one has opened it or played with it. So they made a seal for the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. It was a ring he would wear, and then he would use it for all the correspondences that he would send around. And the story that happened that I want to share with you tonight, that I think is really interesting, occurred during the. All right, if I refresh, does that make things better? No, it doesn't. Oh, it does. Oh, refreshing does. Okay. So during the muddah, so you can hear when you read what Abdullah ibn Abbas tells us, that في المدة التي كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ماد فيها أبا سفيان وكفار قريش. There was a time, al-muddah meaning the period of time, and they had agreed, and he's talking about the timing or the period of where after Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, where there was peace. And Abu Sufyan, because he was demoted during this period quite a bit, and he did not agree. He didn't want the treaty to be written or signed, because he knew that once that happened, the Prophet ﷺ had credibility within Arabia. He was validated as a leader of a country, so they couldn't call him. They could no longer use the words that they were using to describe him or to describe the Muslims in Medina anymore. as outlaws or hooligans or whatever. No, they're a country and they have a leader, and we actually have a treaty with them. So that gave the Prophet ﷺ that credibility. So Abu Sufyan had kind of zoned out a little bit, or checked out, and he started to go on on long caravans of trade. And he was well known in Dimashq because he would go there and he would sell and buy, and he would stay there for a few weeks every time he did this. So during the time that he was there, Halaqa Azim al-Rum, which Hercules was the name of one of the Caesars of Rome at the time, was visiting Damascus. And some say that the reason that he called Abu Sufyan is because he had received the messenger of the Prophet ﷺ already. Some narrations say that he called on Abu Sufyan because he had already received the message that the Prophet ﷺ had sent him, because the Prophet ﷺ sent a message to him. Others say he did this before that. He had heard about Badr and Uhud and Khandaq. Word travels. He had heard about this movement, this man who's claiming prophecy in Medina. So he was interested, he was curious, he was intrigued, he wanted to know more. So when he was in Damascus, he sent saying, is there anyone who knows Muhammad alayhi salatu? Does anyone know Muhammad? And they said, yes, this man who's a very well-known leader of Quraysh, he is related to him, and he knows him well, and he has been in contact with him through war and other venues many times. So he bring him and all of his workers, bring everyone with him. So they all came to Hiraql in his court in Damascus. And he had brought with him, around Hiraql, were sitting all of the leaders of the Roman army and the leaders of Damascus and whatnot. They were all there. So he says, and I have this for you just as the actual wording. قال أيكم أقرب نسبا بهذا الرجل الذي يزعم أنه نبي. Which of you are most related, blood-wise, to this man who is saying that he is a prophet? So Abu Sufyan said, أنا أقربهم نسبا. I am the closest to him in lineage. فقال أدنوه مني. So come forward. So he came forward. And then he said, وقربوا أصحابه وجعلوهم عند ظهره. And then bring all of his people and put them behind him. So have him stand up front and have all of his people stand right behind him. ثم قال لترجمانه. Then he said to the translator who was there, because Hiraql doesn't speak Arabic and Abu Sufyan doesn't speak whatever language Hiraql speaks. إني سائل هذا عن الرجل فإن كذبني فكذبوه. So he told his translator, tell the guys behind him, tell them I'm going to ask this man about Muhammad. If he tells me a lie, I want you guys who are behind just to give me a signal that he's lying, so I can chop his head off immediately. فقال أبو سفيان ولولا الحياء فوالله لولا الحياء من أن يأثروا علي كذبا لكذبت عنه. He said if it wasn't for the fact that I was embarrassed that they're going to lie in front of them, I would have lied. And then he said in another narration, another one, it wasn't for the fact that they would love nothing more than to kill me, I would have lied. Like if I knew that the people behind me would love nothing more than for me to lie so that they could watch my head fly. So I couldn't take chances with this at all. So he had to be had to be honest with all of his answers. That's why this story is interesting, because he's going to be asked about the Prophet ﷺ, and he has to be honest, because if he lies, he has a bunch of people behind him who he's not paying very well, not treating very well, who can't wait for him to lie just so they can go ahead and get him in trouble with the leader of the Roman Empire. فقال, it is questions of Hiraql. كيف نسبه فيكم? What is his lineage like amongst you? Like what his background? قلت هو فينا ذو نسب. Amongst us, indeed, he is someone who comes from good lineage, meaning his father and grandfather and great-grandfather are all great men, people who are highly respected and people who have have achieved a lot. So no, he comes from a good family, قلت هو فينا ذو نسب. قال هذا القول منكم أحد قط قبله. Did anyone ever say this before him? Like, is it a trend within Quraysh that people claim prophecy every once in a while? Like every few years someone decides that they're a prophet. Has this happened before amongst you? He's a smart man. He's looking to see what the story is. Why is this man claiming prophecy? Has this happened before within your city or before? قلت لا. He said, no one has ever done this before. قال فهل كان من آبائه من ملك? Any of his fathers a king? Like, was any of his fathers a king, someone who was a king? قلت لا. No. قال فأشراف الناس يتبعونه أم ضعفاؤهم? Who follows him? The strong and powerful and wealthy, or the weak and oppressed and people who don't have much in life? فَقُلْتُ بَلْ ضُعَفَاؤُهُم. To be honest, it's mostly the weak. It's mostly, the majority of his following are young people who don't have a lot of lineage, people slaves, freed slaves, or people who are still enslaved. That's the majority of his following, which is the truth. قَالَ أَيَزِيدُونَ أَمْ يَنْقُصُونَ. So Hiraql asks him, are they increasing in number or are they decreasing in number? Like, are his followers increasing or decreasing? قُلْتُ بَلْ يَزِيدُونَ. Honestly, they're increasing. It keeps on getting, they're more and more. فقال فهل يرتد أحد منهم سخطة أو سخطة لدينه بعد أن يدخل فيه. Any of the people who enter into his religion, any of them commit apostasy, like leave his religion out of hatred to it, like they walk out disgruntled, they're upset with what happened and they have a bad experience with the whole thing? Very interesting questions. فقال لا. No, not that. He said, Abu Sufyan said, no, we haven't seen that. قال فهل كنتم تتهمونه بالكذب قبل أن يقول ما قال. Was he someone who you knew to be a liar before this? Like, was he someone known to say things that are outrageous or tell lies? قلت لا. I said no. قال فهل يغدر. Is he someone who breaks his word often? Like, if you agree with him to something, does he play dirty, basically? Right? Honestly, these questions are very intelligent, and he's going to. The reason I'm not explaining them is because Hiraql himself is going to explain his questions, so I'm not going to do it. But he's asking these questions. He's looking for something. فَهَلْ يَغْدُرُ. Is he someone who betrays? Does he play dirty to get what he wants? So Abu Sufyan, this is what he said, and it's funny what he said. قال قلت لا ونحن منه في مدة لا ندري ما هو فاعل فيها. قال ولم تمكنني كلمة أدخل فيها شيء غير هذه الكلمة. I said no, but we just signed a treaty with him recently, and I don't know what he's going to do within it. And he's like, and that was the only word I could get in bad about him. Like, it was the only thing I could put into my answers that was bad about him in the whole questioning. He said, well, he hasn't betrayed me so far, but I don't know, maybe he'll betray. We just signed a big treaty with him, so he wants to imply that may happen. He said, this is the only word I could get in, the only jab I could take at him within the line of questioning that I got. قال فهل قاتلتموه. Have you had war with him before? Like, has it come to the degree where there's been war? قلت نعم. I said yes. Abu Sufyan is telling us this. قال فكيف كان قتالكم إياه. So how were your wars with him? قلت والحرب بيننا وبينه سجال ينال منا وننال منه. It's been back and forth. Sometimes he wins, sometimes we win. We both harmed one another. It just hasn't been, he hasn't won them all, we haven't won them all. Right? قال فماذا يأمركم. And then Hiraql asked, well, what does he call to? What's his message really? What's his narrative? What is he saying? قلت يقول اعبدوا الله وحده ولا تشركوا به شيئا. He says, worship Allah alone and don't take any associates with him. Don't have any asnam as shuraka with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَاتْرُكُوا مَا يَقُولُ آبَاؤُكُم. And he's telling us to leave that which our fathers say. To him, that's a big deal. He doesn't know that Hiraql doesn't care for that at all. The guy he's speaking to doesn't care. Arabs cared about this a lot. They got very upset. How dare you tell me not to do what my father did, my father said before me. That's a big deal. But Hiraql, he doesn't see it that way, he doesn't care. So he wants to put another, وَاتْرُكُوا مَا يَقُولُ آبَاؤُكُم. Leave what your fathers have always said. وَيَأْمُرُنَا بِالصَّلَاةِ وَالصِّدْقِ وَالْعَفَافِ وَالصِّلَةِ. And generally, he commands prayer and worship and giving sadaqah and being honest and chastity and صِلَةُ رَحِم. These are the things. فقال هرقل للترجمان. Now he's done his line of questioning. So Hiraql tells the translator to explain the following to them. قل له سألتك عن نسبه فذكرت أنه فيكم ذو نسب. I asked you about his lineage and you told me he's someone who comes from a good family. فكذلك الرسل تبعث في نسب قومها. And that is how prophets and messengers are always sent amongst their people. Allah does not choose them from the lowest socioeconomic status, nor the highest, but He chooses them from good families. Families who have backgrounds of nobility, of honor. Men who you feel proud to be a part of their family, even though they're not necessarily they're not necessarily powerful and wealthy, but they're people of great honor, like Abdul Muttalib, right? And like Hashim, and like Abd Manaf and Qusay. All of these are people of great lineage. وسألتك هل قال أحد منكم هذا القول فذكرت أن لا. And I asked you how many people have said this before him, and you said no one has ever said something like this before him. فقلت لو كان أحد قال هذا القول قبله لقلت رجل يأتسي بقول قيل قبله. And if you said that yes, then I would say, all right, he is just a copycat. He's just doing something that someone else before him has done. It's a trend in Quraysh. People call for prophecy. He was trying his luck. I would have said that, but you're saying no one has said this before. Right? وسألتك هل كان من آبائه من ملك فذكرت أن لا. And I asked you, any of his fathers or forefathers kings? And you said no. قلت فلو كان من آبائه من ملك قلت رجل يطلب ملك أبيه. And if you had said that there was, one of his fathers or forefathers was a king, then I would have said to myself, well, he's a man who wants to reclaim the throne of his father. So that's why he's using prophecy as a way to get sovereignty. He wants to become a king again, so he's going to use prophecy to get there. But you said none of his parents or fathers or forefathers were kings. قلت رجل يطلب منك أبيه وسألتك هل كنتم تتهمونه بالكذب قبل أن يقول ما قال فقلت لا. And I asked you, was he known to be a liar prior to this? And you said no. قال فقد أعرف أنه لم يكن يذر الكذب على الناس ويكذب على الله. And it's clear to me in life that no one would leave lying to people and then go lie to God altogether. No one would just spend all his life being honest with human beings and then just prepare this huge, humongous lie and lie to Allah or about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one does that. Lying in general, like if you're someone who lies, you didn't start today. Like if you told a big lie once, make sure that you have enough self-awareness to notice or acknowledge that this didn't just happen. Like you told this big lie, but you've always been honest. You've been lying for a long time prior to that. For a long time. Lies build up slowly. Our capacity to be dishonest is something that requires work. Like all of us are very well, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us and we crave honesty, we love honesty. We love to be with people who are honest and we love to be honest ourselves. That's why polygraphs work. That's why they work. That's why they work. Because you physically you don't like lying. Like inside of yourself you don't like lying. So people who lie, they don't, like if someone who told a big lie, they didn't start that day. To be able to tell a huge lie, you have to have been lying for a long time before. Small lies, small baby step lies. You have had to building your capacity to that's why people who build, they teach people to beat the polygraph. They teach them how to lie to themselves. Lie so well that their bodies stop even reacting to lies. They don't even, they can tell themselves a lie and believe it and beat the machine. It's not a good thing. Right? People usually they're in military or intelligence, and it's not a good thing to have because you lose after a while the ability to distinguish between what is real and what is unreal, what is wrong, what is unreal anymore. So Halaqa, he's a smart man, and he's pointing out like you wouldn't spend all your life seeing this man honest with everyone, and then suddenly he's going to come and lie about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No, that's not how it works. Subhanallah. Abu Sufyan, Miskeen Abu Sufyan, he was caught in this, where he has to listen to all of this. But maybe that's why he accepted Islam eventually. Maybe this moved him enough that he... وسألتك أشراف الناس اتبعوه أم ضعفاؤهم فذكرت أن ضعفاءهم اتبعوه. And I asked you, like, who follows him? The noble and powerful and strong, or the weak and disadvantaged? And you told me the disadvantaged follow him. قال وكذلك هم أتباع الرسل. And that has always been historically the followers of prophets and messengers. It's always the weak. Because that's what prophets come and do. They come and they bring reform. And they change the status quo so that the weak and the disadvantaged and the oppressed and the transgressed against can find justice and can find opportunity. And that's always been the case historically. وَسَأَلْتُكَ أَيَزِيدُونَ أَمْ يَنْقُصُونَ فَذَكَرْتَ أَنَّهُمْ يَزِيدُونَ. I asked you, are they increasing or decreasing? You said they're increasing. وَكَذَلِكَ أَمْرُ الْإِيمَانِ حَتَّى يَتِمْ. And that is the story of Iman until it reaches full fruition or its full form. Iman starts small and then it increases. It doesn't decrease. It doesn't. No, it keeps on getting bigger. وسألتك أيرتد أحد سخطة لدينه بعد أن يدخل فيه. I asked you, does anyone leave the religion after they enter into it, disgruntled or upset or having a bad experience or saying bad things about him or about the deen himself? فذكرت أن لا. And you said no one. That's not something we've seen. وكذلك الإيمان حين تخالط بشاشته القلوب. And that is بشاشته القلوب. And that is what Iman does. When the beauty, البشاشة, when the joy and the beauty of Iman touches the hearts, that's how it is. And it doesn't leave. You can't rip it out again. People who enter into it and find that Iman and find that وكذلك الإيمان نعم حين تخالط بشاشته القلوب. It's a beautiful term that Hiraql gave here. True Iman, when it truly enters into your heart, never leaves. You make mistakes, you can fall off a bit, you can get confused, you can lose your way, but that Iman will always be inside. Because once it's in, it's in. Because of the beauty of it, the joy of it. And that's an important piece. And that's an important piece of your Islamic experience. You have to learn to find that. Like you have to look for it. And if you haven't, then you need to reassess your approach to your deen. Like, what are you doing? Something's missing. Or else the jamal, the beauty of Iman, the bashasha of Iman is something that brings a lot of serenity and calmness to the heart. وَسَأَلْتُكَ الْيَغْدِرْ فَذَكَرْتَ أَنْ لَا. And I asked you, has he ever betrayed before, or does he break his word? And you said no. وَكَذَلِكَ الرُّسُلُ لَا تَغْدُرْ. And that's how prophets are. They never break their words. Like, they always play it straight. They never play dirty, ever. وَسَأَلْتُكَ بِمَاذَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ. I asked you, what does he command? فذكرت, and you told me, لا تعبدوا الله لا تشركوا به شيئا ينهاكم عن عبادة الأوثان يأمركم بالصلاة والصدق. You told me all the things that you told me about what he commands you to do. فإن كان ما تقول حقا. If what you are telling me today is the truth. فسيملك موضع قدمي هاتين. One day he will rule the piece of earth that is under my feet. He's sitting in Damascus, the sovereign. This is where the Roman Empire rules. So if what you're telling me is truth, then very soon he will rule this land that I am on, meaning we won't be able to stand up to him. Forget about you standing up to him. We can't do. We will lose. وَقَدْ كُنْتُ أَعْلَمُ أَنَّهُ خَارِجٌ. And I always knew that the time of this prophet and messenger was coming, and he was going to present himself. لكن لم أظن أنه فيكم. But I didn't think it was going to be amongst you guys. He's talking to Abu Sufyan. He's like, Arab? Yeah, I wouldn't have bet. I would have never imagined that. Like, we all knew the time for the final prophet after Isa is coming. And we're all wondering, but you completely blindsided us. For him to be Arab, why? Why would he be amongst you? That's how he's speaking to Abu Sufyan. And that's how people saw Arabs back then. That's what they saw them like. Amongst you? Why? I can't imagine why he would be amongst you people. Right? It was how they saw them. SubhanAllah. The Arabs back then were so, they fought amongst themselves so much. They were so divided and weak and poor. They lacked ethically, so they lacked politically, and they lacked organizationally on so many levels. Like, they had a few good things, obviously, also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not have chosen them. But they lacked so many things that all of the surrounding empires didn't really feel the threat. Like, they weren't threatened by them, really. Just didn't feel it. That's why the Kaaba was left for so long, because they just didn't feel that. And that's what he told them. لم أكن أظن أنه فيكم. I didn't think it was going to be amongst you guys. فلو أني أعلم أني أخلص إليه لتجشمت لقاءه. And if I knew that I could somehow get to him, like if I had a route in my life to make it to him, then I would have started my journey towards meeting him. لتجشمت لقاءه. I mean, I would have put in my effort but I can't. I'm the leader of this land. I can't move there. If I go there, it's going to it's impossible. I'm the leader of this. I can't actually do this. There's no way to do it. وَلَوْ كُنْتُ عِنْدَهُ لَغَسَلْتُ عَنْ قَدَمِهِ. And if I were to be with him, I would wash his feet. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is what Abu Sufyan tells us. Miskeen. Abu Sufyan would walk out and he would say to the people around him, لَقَدْ وَصَلَ خَبَرُ مُحَمَّدٍ إِلَى هَذَا الرَّجُلِ حَتَّى خَافَهُ. The word of Muhammad has made it as far as this guy, as Caesar, and he's afraid of him. He's afraid of him. Abu Sufyan was in awe. How does he know about him? And why does he care about him? And why is he saying this? SubhanAllah. And I find this story to be very important. Because it's a story that is told to us by someone who would otherwise, probably wouldn't have told the story had he not accepted Islam. Like Abu Sufyan, had he not accepted Islam at the end, he would probably never told this story. But he had to, because there are people who are witnesses to the story. So he had to tell it himself so that the narrative was coming from him and not from others. And he told this probably a few years after the Prophet ﷺ passed away. This story was not told during the Prophet ﷺ's time. He never heard it ﷺ from Abu Sufyan during his life ever. He saw this was told later on. Oh, it's not. I don't know what to do with this. طيب خير إن شاء الله. There you go, something at least. Here are the names of the 14 messengers the Prophet ﷺ sent to the different kings. So Al-Aqra' ibn Abdullah was sent to the king of Iran, and Ubay ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu was sent to Sa'd Hudhaym, and Jarir ibn Abdullah al-Bajali was sent to Dhil Kila' ibn Nakur, and then you go down the list, and every person was sent to a king, one of the kings of the lands, to offer a message from the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And then number 6 specifically, Al-Harith ibn Umayr al-Azdi, so memorize that name because it's important. Al-Harith ibn Umayr al-Azdi, a young 19-year-old man, was sent to Sahib Busra, the Ghasasina, which are one of the kingdoms that closed off the northern part of Arabia. So what is today Saudi Arabia and the Gulf was basically disconnected from the rest of the world via 2 kingdoms that were stuck right. They had borders with each other, and they closed off the northern part. So you couldn't make it from Mecca to Asham without going through the lands of Al-Ghasasina or Al-Manavira on both sides, right? And they were, each of these 2 kingdoms were allies with the empire that was closer to them. So the one on the western side that closed the western opening closer to Egypt, they were the Ghasasina, and they were allies with the Romans because they were closer to their sovereignty, to their sovereign lands. On the eastern side were the Manadira, and they were allies with Al-Furs, with the Persian Empire, because they were closer to Iran, closer to them, right? So the Prophet ﷺ had a problem where he's living in a piece of land in a peninsula or a semi-peninsula that was cut off from the world by these 2 kingdoms that didn't let anyone out through. So amongst the 2 kings he sent messages to was the kings of these 2 kingdoms, Ghasasina wal Manadira. He sent to Ghasasina Al-Harith ibn Umayr al-Azdi, because we're going to talk about him in a few moments. He would send Khalid ibn al-Walid radiallahu anhu to Uqaydir, which is Malik Dumat al-Jandal. And I'm going to tell you the story of this because it's important. There's a story that I'll tell you about this a little bit later. He sent Dihya al-Kalbi, whom the Prophet ﷺ used to say was, whenever Jibreel came, he came looking like Dihya. Dihya was a beautiful, very good-looking man. And he sent him to Hiraql. So Hiraql, who was speaking to Abu Sufyan, we don't know if he had received the message from Dihya before he called Abu Sufyan, or he received it later. I think he received it and then he called Abu Sufyan. Like he read this message like this is a wicked message. I don't know who this man is and how he's sent me this. I need to know more about this gentleman, so he calls Abu Sufyan to learn more. And then when he got all those answers. Some scholars say that Hiraql accepted Islam internally. There are Islamic scholars historically who have pointed out that Hiraql is considered someone who Aslam, even though he did not make it public. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I do know that he was able to identify greatness. He was able to acknowledge that this was not a hoax, that there was more to this story than what he had heard. And he sent Hatib ibn Abi Balta radiallahu anhu, memorized that name as well, to Al-Muqawqis, Malik al-Iskandariya. So one of the kings of Egypt, the king of Iskandariya today, the known city, Al-Muqawqis, he's one of the Azim al-Qibt, and he sent Hatib ibn Abi Balta to him, and that's important too because I'm telling you a story about it. All right, so let's go back a bit to the beginning here. All right, so the Prophet ﷺ has a prophetic seal. He seals off his messages, and he sends all these people out to speak to these kings. He sends out to Badan Malik al-Yaman, one of the kings of Yemen, one of his messengers, alayhi salatu wasalam. Now Badan had received message from Kisra, the ruler of Persia, to go and bring Muhammad to him. The Prophet ﷺ sent a message to Kisra, sent a message to Badan as well, to all the kings. So Kisra, when he saw the message, he didn't even, he threw it into the fire, like he tore it up and threw it away. So when the Prophet ﷺ heard that, قال مزق الله ملكه. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tear his sovereignty, his kingdom. And Kisra got very offended. He said, my servant, my slave is asking me to accept his, what is this? How dare he speak to me like that? About the Prophet ﷺ, right? Because to him, all of the people in Arabia are just his slaves. They don't add up to anything. So he sends to Badan, which is walihi ala al-Yaman. So Kisra, the leader of Persia, he owned Manadira, which is that kingdom on the northern part of Arabia to the east, and he also owned the kingdom of Yemen, And he put someone there to rule it in his name, but his name is Badan. So he sent to Badan a messenger saying, Kisra tells you to send a few people to bring this Muhammad guy and bring him over to him. He wants to see what his story is. So Badan says, okay, Hadir, of course. And Badan is reading his own message, so he's like, yeah, I don't know what this is. So they send a number of his messengers over to the Prophet ﷺ. Only 2 guys. This tells you how confident they were and how useless and worthless they thought the Arabs were. He sent 2 men. The Sahaba say that we'll never forget those men because they were men with long mustaches and no lihya. Arabs all had liha. So they see these men from afar, they look very different. Shawarib, no lihya. So they're entering Medina, and you can tell that they're not from around here, and they're not, and they ask to speak with the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ welcomes them, they come in. What do we want? You have to come with us. Badan has called for you, you're going to be taken to Kisra to meet him. So the Prophet ﷺ smiled. He's not going to go with them, obviously. فقال ما تقولون إن أخبرتكم أن ربي قتل رب باذان. That my Lord took the life of the Lord of your king. Badan is their king, right, in Yemen. So he said, how about you go back to your king and tell him that the Lord of Muhammad ﷺ took the life of your Lord, which is Kisra, because Badan, he followed him blindly. And I'm not coming with you, so go back. And they would tell him, these men were like very genuine, saying, no, you should come with us. If you don't come with us, then your whole family, your whole country will pay the price for this. We will come with you with a big army. We'll kill all of you. Just come so that you don't, just go back and tell this to your king. So they go back. They come back empty-handed to Badan. Badan's sitting there like, where is he? And he said, no, he wouldn't come. Was he insane? What do you mean he didn't come? How could he not come? I'm telling him he said he sent a message with us. He told us to tell you that his Lord killed yours. So Badan said, come again? He said, he sent us telling you that his Lord, his Rabb, killed yours. فقال أمررتم على أحد قبله. Did you go anywhere on the way there? No. Did you go anywhere on the way back? No, we just went. We told us to go, we went, we came back, we did nothing. Badan had just received, an hour before, the news that Kisra was murdered by his own son. That night, and now there was a fight going on. The reason that the Persian Empire fell so quickly is because within this period, the day that I'm telling you, Kisra was killed by one of his kids. And then the kids that were left start to fight over the kingdom. And as they did this, of course, all these stories are going to occur, and then Khalid ibn Walid is going to take 4,000 men and go basically level all of Persia because they're fighting amongst themselves. The reason being is that one of the kids killed Kisra. So Badan had just received word that, and no one knew yet. He had not, it was a sealed message, he opened it, and he didn't know what to do because now he has to wait. He has to wait to see which of the 2 kids is going to be the leader, so he can offer his bay'ah to, or else, it's a whole problem. He can't tell his congregation, he can't tell his followers or his subjects that Kisra is dead, it's going to cause a rebellion, so he has to be quiet. And the Prophet ﷺ tells him this. فَقَالَ هَذَا مَنْ أَخْبَرَهُ. Who told him this? So Badan said, وَاللَّهِ لَوْلَا أَنَّ لَهُ وَحْيًا مِنَ السَّمَاءِ يُخْبِرُهُ مَا عَلِمْ. If it wasn't for the fact that he's receiving word from the sky, he would have never known this. فَإِنِّي أَشْهَدُ أَنْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَأَنَّهُ عَبْدُهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. And he would send the 2 men back, telling the Prophet ﷺ that he accepted Islam, and ask him what to do. فَأَبْقَاهُ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْيَمَنِ. So the Prophet ﷺ stay where you are. You can continue to rule Yemen as you were, no changes. And because of this, he would send people to teach. Amongst them, Sayyidina Mu'adh, as you know, amongst them Sayyidina Ali, he would send people, for maybe 6 months at a time, to go and teach people of Yemen. Why? Because it was safe. He stopped sending people without guarantees. Why? You remember what happened after Uhud? Every time they would come and say, Ya Rasulullah, send us someone to teach us. He would send a few men. They would murder them. He lost over 100 souls, alayhi salatu wasalam, of knowledgeable young Muslims. He didn't have a lot of Muslims to begin with. The numbers he had was low to begin with. And he was sending his quality people, and they were murdering them. So he stopped sending anybody without guarantees. So now that Badan is ruling Yemen, he is safe, alayhi salatu. He sends Ali. Ali would go and come back. Sayyidina Mu'adh would be sent. He would go and come back. Everyone would be, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, others, he would send people to go and teach Quran, teach fiqh, teach people their deen so they could practice Islam. So Ahl Yemen learned Islam early from the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum. And it stayed a place where Al-Bayt Rasulullah would take refuge in. Like, meaning, a few decades later, when the house or the family of the Prophet ﷺ would be butchered by the Umayyads, right? A lot of them would seek refuge into Yemen and to Egypt. Like, that's where they sought refuge for a long time, and that's why a lot of them still live there till today. If you go to Aden or Hadramaut, or you'll see that there's a lot of people from the Prophet ﷺ's lineage who have a very clear background back to him ﷺ. So that's the story of Badan, the king of Yemen. Now the story that we have to stop, and I can tell you the story of a bunch of others, but just in interest of time, we'll go to the one that really matters the most. He sent Al-Harith ibn Umayr al-Azdi, radiyallahu anhu. Harith was a young man. And he was sent to Sahib Busra, to the Ghasasina. He would arrive there to offer to offer the message. He'd give the message to the brother of the king. And the brother of the king, instead of giving it to the king, would read the message, burn it, and then brutally murder Al-Harith radiallahu anhu. He would kill him. Now, it's a very well-known, unwritten rule that you don't kill the messenger. There are rules that are international that you just don't break. Once you break them, once you break unwritten, internationally agreed upon rules, there's no point in negotiating with you anymore. Like, you're not someone we can speak to, because you don't follow the basic laws or basic rules of decency. And the Prophet ﷺ did this many times in his life, where in Hudaybiyah, once he heard that they had killed Uthman the messenger, he prepared for war. Khalas. Because I can't talk to you if you're breaking the rules that we all agree upon. There's no room anymore for us to negotiate. When you bomb hospitals and you bomb schools and you murder children, khalas, that means you've lost. There's no ethics anymore. There's no point in. There's no space for us to sit down and talk. Talk about what? Talk about what if you are breaking the basic rules of what we all agree to? No one does this. You don't do that. So when the Prophet ﷺ heard that Al-Harith radiallahu anhu was murdered and the problem is that the king, after this occurred, did not send an apology, did not send a diya, did not say this was not my choice and send the man who did it to be punished. He stood by it. So he stood behind what happened, and he didn't. So the Prophet ﷺ would react himself. And this wasn't only an example of how you deal with those who lose basic the basics of ethicality, but also the story that I'm going to narrate for you over this week and next week is a story of how the Prophet ﷺ valued the lives of every Muslim. Just so you know, all the examples I told you about Abd al-Waqara and Bi'r Ma'una and all of the acts of betrayal that happened after Uhud, for example, and around that time, the Prophet ﷺ sought justice for all of them later. We don't tell you the piece of the story because there's not much to tell. Once he was strong enough, he went to the people who did this and he took the qasas. I mean, the people who murdered they were taken out. The Prophet ﷺ, once he was strong enough, he punished them all. Everyone who betrayed and murdered Muslims was later on dealt with in a just manner. He didn't let anyone off the hook, especially those who murdered people who were innocent or people who were not involved in warfare, or it was not during a time of war, or there was an agreement of some sort that this wouldn't happen and they did it anyways. So when this happened, the Prophet ﷺ got very upset, obviously. And he called as-salatu jami'ah. He called upon, after Salat al-Fajr, Salatu Jami'ah, everyone who can bear arms needs to come. So around 3,000 men showed up. And he got on the minbar, alayhi salatu wa sallam, قُتِلَ أَخُوكُمْ الْحَارِثِ ibn Umayr al-Azdi. And he would use that word, and that's the word you find in every book of Seerah. Your brother, Al-Harith, was killed today. My messenger, قُتِلَ رَسُولِي, my messenger, أَخُوكُمْ, your brother, was murdered today. فَمَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فَلْيَتَجَهَّزْ لِغَزْوِ الرُّومِ. So whoever believes in Allah and the hereafter, may they prepare themselves. We are going to go and invade Rome. He used that terminology. لِغَزْوِ الْغَسَاسِينَ, and when? لِغَزْوِ الرُّومِ. We're going after them all. You can't do this. You see, the Muslim back then, even though their numbers were low, but they had a pretty impressive passport, right? Most of you are here because you needed a different passport, so you can move around and be safe. Because the passport that you inherited wasn't very good. Like when someone sees that passport, like, put him on the side, let him wait in line, do a random check on him. Yeah. So you sought out something stronger. The Prophet ﷺ provided for his followers a strong passport. You don't mess with Muslims. You don't mess with them. You don't mistreat them. An injustice will be corrected. If you harm them, then someone will come looking for you. It's not going to go unpunished. Right? That was the value of this. When you talk about the Battle of Mu'tah, which is what we're going to talk about, and as I said, some scholars say Khaybar happened before it, but we don't know for sure. And this is how I tell the story, so it's okay if you think it's before. But the Battle of Mu'tah occurred because of this, and he didn't go on it, alayhi salatu himself. This was going to be the first time he's going to send others to lead the army, because he knew, alayhi salatu, that succession was coming soon. Meaning he was going to move on very soon. It wasn't too far away. This is the year number 7 of his hijrah, alayhi salam. He passes away at the beginning of year 11. 3.5 years left of his life, alayhi salam. That's it. So he knew somewhere back in his mind after Hudaybiyah that things are working out. His life is not going to go, he's not going to live forever. He needs to make sure that there are leaders. He needs to know that these people are capable of performing the task without his presence, alayhi salatu wasalam. So this was going to be one of the big ones. In Mu'tah, some scholars call it Ghazwat Mu'tah. But others will say, no, it's Seerah, because he wasn't there. Ghazwa is a word that you use only when he's there, alayhi salatu wasalam. But others said, no, it's a Ghazwa. And you don't need. So there's this long argument amongst the scholars of Seerah, what you call the Battle of Mu'tah. So we just say Ma'arakat Mu'tah, the Battle of Mu'tah, to make our lives easier. But this is what scholars argue about this, because it's unclear. What do you call it? Because he wasn't there, alayhi salatu wasalam. 3,000 people assembled. He told them all to prepare themselves after Fajr. And he was going to come to them after Jumu'ah. Abdullah ibn Rawaha, one of the known, we talked about him in Hudaybiyah, he was one of the known poets. He decided to perform ijtihad on his own. And he said, you know what, I'll pray Jumu'ah with the Prophet ﷺ, then I'll go with him. That's not what he said, ﷺ. He told the people, I want you all after Fajr to go get yourself, prepare yourselves and wait for me here, like right, he pointed out an area, you wait for me there after Fajr. I will come to you when I'm ready, you prepare yourselves. Ibn Rawaha said, well, the Prophet ﷺ is going to pray Jumu'ah, so I'll go pray Jumu'ah, I'll get the ajr of Jumu'ah. That's what he said to himself. So he comes after Jumu'ah with the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. قال فتغير وجه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. The Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام's face changed. And he looked at Ibn Rawaha فقال ما أخرك? Why are you late? فقال قلت يا رسول الله أصلي معك الجمعة وآتي فأستزيد من الخير. This is his wording. I said to myself, I'll pray Jumu'ah with you. I'll get more ajr by praying Jumu'ah with you. فقال صلى الله عليه وسلم لا والله. No, not at all. لغدوة في سبيل الله خير مما فعلت. To go just in the morning, meaning to go on a task for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just for a small time in the morning is better than what you've done. والله ما الذي تأخرت عنه ما الذي ذهبت إليه بخير من الذي تأخرت عنه. That which you went to was not better for you than that which I told you to do. Meaning I said very clearly, I want you here after Fajr. Following clearly what I told you to do, there's more ajr in that than deciding to do your own thing. And this is something that the scholars of Islam use quite often as a story. When the Prophet ﷺ makes a very clear command, very clear in terms of what priorities are, then you have to follow that. You don't get to just make things up on your own. You don't get to decide for yourself and perform ijtihad, where the Prophet ﷺ is being very clear in terms, this is more important than that, or this is the priority over this. You don't get to change that and decide to do something else. When he taught us ﷺ that birr al-walidain is more important than nawafil, then taking care of your parents is more important than qiyam al-layl and reading Quran and doing sunnah, because that's what he taught us alayhi salatu wasalam. So when you prioritize things for us, you accept that and you run with it. You don't perform your own ijtihad in your life and decide that you're going to do whatever you want. يقول ابن رواحة عبد الله بن رواحة قال فوالله لا أجد شيئا أكفر به عن غضب رسول الله عليه إلا أن أموت شهيدا. So I can't think of anything that will take away the sin of me making the Prophet ﷺ so upset with me, then I die as a martyr in this battle. Like this is Abdullah ibn Rawaha's thinking. He's like, I made a very big mistake, obviously, because he was very upset ﷺ. I told you, Fajr, you go get yourself, come prepare yourself after Fajr, and wait for me. The last time a group of people decided not to listen to him, what happened? Right? So they're all standing there. Abdullah ibn Rawaha feels it. Like the last time, he told people, don't move until I tell you to move. And they moved, a full battle was lost. He lost his tooth and almost died, and Hamza ibn Abdul Talib died, and a bunch of other great names all martyred, and it changed. And because of that one betrayal after the other, and Muslims were killed, because you made a mistake, because you decided that you were going to make your decision yourself over what the Prophet ﷺ is teaching. So Abdullah ibn Rawah felt in his heart that he had done that he had decided, he made a decision without listening. And the Sahaba were looking, and he felt bad. He didn't go on his own because it was time for the Sahaba to carry this responsibility themselves. The Sahaba had to get ready now because he was not going to be with them forever. And if this was going to work, he had to leave behind him leaders, people who were capable of carrying this message, people who were willing to organize and follow command and be leaders when needed and offer their lives and sacrifice and push towards Islam becoming what it became. And if he was not, and that's why it's so important for training. Now I know that we're talking about battles and stuff, but that was the test and the trial of the time. The trial of the time of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba were battles, which is the most difficult of all because life is on the line all the time. Right? It's very hard. But when you study his life ﷺ, you find that he was always planning for succession. He was always putting people, giving them responsibilities, letting them train, make mistakes, bringing them back, teaching them, and then doing it again. And it's because he did that ﷺ, all throughout these years. It wasn't just Abu Bakr and Umar who could lead. No, there were so many leaders. You had Usama bin Zayd and Ali ibn Abi Talib and Talha and Zubayr and Sa'id and Sa'ad and Yazid and Zayd. All these young Sahaba who were capable of leading. Why? Because he made sure he put them in positions where they could lead, watching them alayhi salatu wasalam, sending them, go teach the people of Yemen, listening, taking feedback, bringing them back, talking to them again. He built leaders alayhi salatu wasalam. This is an important piece that we have to do within our communities. We have to care about this. We have to care about training the next generation. The person who's going to sit in this spot later on and talk. Not to say that this is the most important job. It's one of the jobs. It's one of the many, many jobs. It's actually a very small portion of the job. It's maybe like 2% of this whole job. Like in terms of taking care of a Muslim community and what we need, what we do here is like very small. It's a slither. You need 1-2 people who can do it, tops. That's it. You don't need 50 khatibs. You need 1 or 2. That's it. A few huffaz to lead the prayer. But what you need a lot of Muslims who are practicing and successful Muslims within their domains, within their fields, with the ethics and the understanding and the commitment to their deen and their willingness to put the Islam before themselves, their willingness to put the ummah before themselves, to sacrifice their time and their wealth and sometimes their lives for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we don't have that succession, we don't have those type of people, then we're not going to go anywhere. He made sure he had those people alayhi salam amongst them before he left this world. And that's why Islam made it this far. That's why we're sitting here, people from every background, listening to what I'm talking about. Prophet alayhi salam would make an announcement. He would say, we're going to go, and he would explain that you're going to go and seek justice for your brother Al-Harith. You're going to go and seek justice for him, for what they did to him, for killing my messenger, killing a person who was just delivering a message, radiallahu anhu. I always imagine, like, Al-Harith ibn Umayr al-Azdi, by the way, comes from Azd Shanu'a, which is a name of a tribe. These are Bedouins. These are people who are very simple. Al-Harith ibn Umayr did not come from a big family. He didn't come from a big family. His father was unknown. No one knew who his father was. He was an unknown name. He didn't come from nobility or from lineage. He was just a 19-year-old Muslim. Like the average Joe amongst the Muslimin. But he was a Muslim nonetheless. And he was going to move, alayhi salam, the biggest army that he's ever moved so far. Up till now, 3,000 warriors is the largest army that has ever moved from Medina. Up till now, everything has been smaller. 1,500, maybe to 2,000. That's it. It's all smaller numbers. 3,000 people can move the biggest army for just a Muslim, an average Muslim. Had Al-Harith come from a big family, then you could say, well, he had to do this alayhi salatu wasalam, to save face with this tribe, to save face with this leader. This was a person who the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam could have easily paid his mother, because he was yatim, paid the mother the diya, and twice the amount, given her a nice home, and given her, and she would be happy. He didn't have to do this. He didn't have to risk his whole nation. He's going to risk all of Medina for this, because if 3,000 warriors go on this battle, how many are going to be left in Medina to protect Medina? 300. That's it, right? And Medina now is very vulnerable to all of to Khaybar and to Quraysh, because he's sending the whole army out, alayhi salatu wasalam. Why would he do this? Because you can't allow that. You can't allow them to murder someone innocently, because if you allow that, then they'll do it again, and then again. And again, and then they'll just start bombing, just closing their eyes and just pressing the button. Well, we'll pull the children out of the rubble. They don't fear anymore. There's no fear. من أمن العقوبة أساء الأدب. Anyone who has no fear of consequences becomes rude, disrespectful, and does things that no one does. Right? And if a child has no consequences fear, he doesn't fear that there's going to be a uquba, they lose adab, they have no etiquette anymore. Because they don't fear anything. Human beings need a little bit of fear of consequence. It's not the fear of brutality, but fear of consequence. The Prophet ﷺ had to establish this, that there's going to be a uquba. You can't do that. You can't murder a messenger. You can't break an international law and murder someone and then not, and there'll be nothing. There's going to be consequences. Which is why the Battle of Mu'tah is unique in terms of how it ended. Understanding what I explained to you will help you comprehend why the battle ended the way it did, why they pulled back, right? Because the point was not to invade the whole kingdom of Rome. It was rather to make it clear that you can't do that and get away with it. You're not going to be able to murder someone and not have consequences. There are going to be consequences. So he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, he explained why. He explained the difficulty of it all. حث على الجهاد عليه الصلاة والسلام. He talked about the importance of and then he called it أميركم اليوم زيد بن حارثة. And he put his own son عليه الصلاة والسلام as the Amir. Zayd was the closest thing to a son to the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. He was not his biological son, but he was everything else that a son is to a father. He saw him as a son, and Zayd saw the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام as a father. May you always understand that when you study his life and you study the seerah. That yes, Zayd was not his biological son, but he was in every way a son to the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ saw his children to be his grandchildren. And he loved just like a grandfather goes and he takes care of his grandchildren, he would go to Zayd's home and take care of his grandchildren the same way, treated them the same way. He felt the same way towards them. So he didn't, because this was a very dangerous move. I don't want to say suicidal because you misunderstand. If this was, they were going into the unknown to fight an army that was definitely going to be outnumbering them by a ridiculous number, and you're picking a fight with the big wolves. Why would you do this? So he's not going to put a leader, he's going to put his own son on. He's going to put the person he loves the most in this role. Let me explain to you more about Zayd ibn Haritha. Sayyidina Abu Bakr يقول ما توليت الخلافة إلا لأن زيدا استشهد في مؤتة. I became Khalifa for one reason and one reason only, because Zayd had passed away in Mu'tah. He was martyred in Mu'tah. If Zayd was alive, we all knew who was going to be voted in. We all knew who the Prophet ﷺ loved the most. Everyone did. Umar, Uthman, they knew. It was Zayd ibn Haritha radiallahu anhu that he was going to be. SubhanAllah, he passed away. As the story. فقال أميركم زيد فإن قتل فجعفر بن أبي طالب. And Ja'far had just come back. Miskeen Ja'far, wallahi. He just came back. I missed that piece, and I didn't miss it. I'm going to talk to you about it. The people in Abyssinia had just come back. 15 years. See, everyone forgot about them. Because it's been so long, even in this storytelling that it's been a year and a half. Where I told you that he sent people to Abyssinia to have a second base for Muslims. And Ja'far was there. And he told them, stay there until I tell you to come back. Almost 15 years. And then he told them after Hudaybiyah, right? Right after Hudaybiyah, khalas, we have the peace treaty, come back. They went 100 people. They came back 500. Amongst them were people who were going to fight in this war. That's why we have 3,000 in this battle. Because many of them are the people who came from Habasha. Because they were living there for 15 years. They got married amongst the people of Habasha. They performed da'wah. They're Habash who accepted Islam. So they came back to Medina. Now, a lot of these Muslims don't speak Arabic. A lot of these young people. Abna Ja'far, a lot of them don't speak Arabic. Because they grew up in Abyssinia. Many of them their skin color is different because they married into African families, so they came back looking different, speaking differently. I love this part of the story because I halt on this part of the story because there's a piece here that you have to know. The Prophet ﷺ was the happiest ever to greet them all. They made housing for them. He would stand there ﷺ and speak to them, have someone speak, and he learned words in the Abyssinian language. It's in Bukhari and Muslim. It's in Bukhari and Muslim that he learned to say certain words so he could respond to them, so he could speak. Like they would say, all these kids standing there, kids standing there talking to the Prophet ﷺ in a language he doesn't understand. He knows a few words. He uses a few words with them ﷺ. They want to dance in the masjid. with their hirab. He lets them dance in the masjid, alayhi salatu wasalam. They came to him with a duf, and they're singing. And he stands there, alayhi salatu wasalam, smiling, and they're all singing to him. They had memorized, the people of Habasha had got their kids to memorize an nasheed, to come and tell the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, when they got there. So the kids are standing there, and they're performing their song, and he doesn't understand the word, alayhi salatu wasalam. So he said, "Ma yaqulun," just tell me what they're saying. Translate, يقولون محمد رجل صالح. They're saying Muhammad is a good man. In so many words. It's a long thing. فيبتسم النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. Imagine the amount of integration that had to happen for these people. By the way, there are still places in Medina and Mecca where the people, where the descendants live, where their descendants still live, because subhanallah, they came back. And Ja'far was amongst them. The Prophet ﷺ was so happy that Ja'far came back. But business was business. 4 months later, we have to go for Mu'tah. So Ja'far was made the second in command, and a lot of the Muslims from Habasha were in that army. That's why that army was bigger. قال فإن قتل فعبد الله بن رواحة. And then if he dies, then Abdullah ibn Rawaha will be the leader of the army. Amongst that army were going to be some new Muslims as well, like Khalid ibn Walid. He just accepted Islam last episode. So now he's going to go and fight for the first time with the Muslims. But why isn't he not, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? It's a no-brainer. Who are we going to put to lead? Khalid? No. The Prophet ﷺ did not want Khalid to be made a leader that way. He wanted him to earn it. He wanted him to earn the right to lead, not to be appointed by him, alayhi salatu wasalam. So he put him just like anyone else in the army. And Khalid was fine with that. He was amongst the people. So before, we're running out of time. So before they left, something happened. A man min Ahl Kitab came to the Prophet ﷺ in front of the army as he's talking to them. He comes and he interrupts. فقال يا أبا القاسم إن عندنا في التوراة أن نبيا إذا ولى رجلا ثم سمى بعده رجلا فإن الأول يموت. In the Torah we have a law that if a prophet is preparing an army and he points out a leader, like a war leader, a commander, and then he points out his succession, that means the first one is going to 100% die. فهل عندكم مثل ما عندنا? Do you have in your teachings something similar to what we have in my teachings? قال فسكت النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام. He didn't answer عليه الصلاة والسلام. وانصرف, and he left. So this man didn't get his answer. So he goes to Zayd. يقول يا زيد اذهب فودع زوجتك وقبل أولادك فإن صاحبك إن كان صادقا لن تعود. Go back, Zayd. Hug your wife. Kiss your kids. Because if your man is honest and truthful, then you're not coming back from this. فقال زيد أما والله لا أعود ولا أرجع ولا أقبل أولادي ورسول الله صادق وأتوكل على الله ربي. I indeed will not go back, and I will not go and kiss my children or hug my wife. And Muhammad is truthful, and I will go into this depending upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he goes to Ja'far, and he says the same thing to Ja'far. You want to go say your final goodbyes? They can't go. Like, if they go back, you say, well, why didn't they just go back? Because the Prophet ﷺ told them, no, you're leaving. He didn't give them permission to go back into the city. So he tells Ja'far, go back. He wants to ruin everything. He tells Ja'far this. Ja'far answers. And the thing is, he goes to these three people in different places. And he doesn't get it. To these two men, and they're not together. And he gets the exact same answer. يقول فظننت أن الأول أخبر الثاني ما يقول. Until I thought that the first guy told the second guy what to say, because they answered the exact same answer. أما والله فإني لا أعود ولا أرجع ولا أقبل ورسول الله صادق وأتوكل على الله ربي. I will not go back, and I will not return, and I will not kiss my children, and the Prophet is truthful, and I will depend upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The people of Medina, men and women, would come out and they would make dua for this army. أيدكم الله حفظكم الله ردكم الله صالحين. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala strengthen you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have you return back to a salihin, in a state of salah, in a state of piety. That you don't come back shamed that you ran away or something, because that's what's mattered to them. Not just come back alive. No, come back alive and you ran away. No, don't come back alive. Come back pious. Come back that you stood your ground and you did what you were supposed to do. That's the dua they made for them. Ibn Rawaha would say, أما أنا فلا ردني الله. As for me, I hope that Allah does not send me back after what I did, after how I angered the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. We'll end with that, inshallah ta'ala. We'll continue what happened in the story next week. Subhanallah, bihamdik, la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka.